Introducing Richard Huck Planas, 8th degree master of Kenpo Karate. As a true first-generation student of Ed Parker's, Huck trained at Master Parker's Pasadena School in the late 60s, and as a black belt, he managed and taught at the Pasadena School until 1975. Huck served for over 10 years as the Executive Vice President of the International Kenpo Karate Association until Master Parker's death. Huck Planas teaches not only the how-to, but the why, based on the rules and principles of the Kenpo system. As Master Parker said, "He who knows how will be the student. He who knows why will be the instructor."
Hello, I'm Richard Planas, and we're here to continue our series of tapes on the Kenpo forms. Now, we've done the ones, the short one and long one. We've talked about the relationship of how the motion relates to each other. Now we'll continue the relationship a little farther. And what we're going to do here also is pick up some new angles. As remember, when we did short one and long one, we basically, what we say is face the four walls. So we face the four walls with our in, out, up, down sequence of motion. And we're still staying with that in, out, up, down sequence of motion. But we're going to pick up some new angles. If you can see the pattern on the floor, this is the same pattern we had last time, but now I've added some short lines in the middle to put the X and the cross together. And these new angles would be what we call, as far as the clock principle goes, our 1:30, 10:30, 4:30, and 7:30 line. So when we get into the series of motion, I'll be explaining this by that. I'll say we'll be going to 7:30 or 4:30 or 10:30, so you'll understand where we're going. Now remember, we're doing the forms. We're doing the same thing again as our in, out, up, down series of motion, but we have to do something different, just like in the ones. Remember, in short one, we retreated with a front hand block, and long one, we retreated with a front hand block and added our rear hand counter as a punch and picked up the stance change that goes with that of the forward bow. Then we had to transition through a forward bow instead of short one of walking your neutral, and you picked up the body mechanics that comes into play there. Now we change because there's so much to learn, and we keep building and building on our building blocks to the forms. Instead of having one train of thought like short one was nothing but retreat with a front hand block, and basically long one the same, every time we change our sequence of motion now, or series of blocks, we're going to change the power principle that goes along with it. Now also, what makes a form is nothing but basics or techniques tied together with foot maneuvers. And the foot maneuver is different in a lot of our forms. Sometimes we'll use different stances to represent the normal. So here in the twos, in short two here, we're going to use a cat stance to represent normal, because basically that's what you're doing, is you're bringing your feet together. So if you're moving, for instance, from a neutral, and I say, okay, like I'm gonna move in, I'm gonna move forward to a neutral, and then I'm gonna do it on the opposite side, I can use a cat, and that is just saying, okay, let's go back to normal, which basically brings your feet together, and then you can do the other side. So in this form, we're using the cat stance to represent the normal, and I'll point that out more when we get into the form. Now, also in the ones, we basically had one power principle when we went to our strike, was the in-place stance change of the forward bow using torque for our power principle. Now we're going to combine power principles. Remember, the power principles, basically the three main ones are torque, backup mass, and marriage with gravity. So now we're going to combine torque and backup mass and torque and marriage with gravity, and we'll show them in combination and separated from each other. And this form is like the old saying of putting the cart before the horse. We combine them before we separate them and break them apart, and I'll explain that more when we get into the form. Also, in long one, when we finished our in, out, up, down series of motion, we had a hand isolation, as you remember, or should remember in the end, and should know by now, that this is to point out our previews of coming attractions or the new material or things to look for. Well, now in short two, we introduce a lot of new material, but it's in the form, it's not in an isolation. So this is a key or a clue also. Don't just look for new information. in isolations only. A lot of it is buried in the motion itself. And most of our forms have isolations to do this, and there are also a lot of new material information in the form. So that's enough talking about it. Now we'll get into doing the form. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to get into the form, and again I'm going to be moving around a little bit on our footwork pattern. This is just for the relationship so you can see on tape of where we're moving. And also, I'm not going to use the salutation to start the form because I do everything traditionally the way it was originally taught. And what we have, the ones and the twos, are what we call the basics forms. And traditionally the basics forms never use the salutation. The salutation was added mostly for people to go to tournaments with, to make the forms, the earlier forms, longer. We only use the salutation on what we call the technique forms. Now, if I started centered, again, I wouldn't be on my line so you could see. So to start the form, I'll have to move over to pick up the 612 line, as that's our first line we're working on. Okay, now, again, remember we say only the ones retreat. The twos up are what we call basically advance. So we're finished retreating, we're going to move in. Now there's a difference. Remember when we did long one after short one, we made a statement. And let me go back and just go over that one time. That when we went back and we did our inward block and our punch, and then we had an extra stance, which was a cat stance with an extra block, and we talked about why that was done to make the statement of how we're going to move through the form, what's the proper footwork. So now we're advancing, so we bring in a rule here, what we call, you never move in without a cover. You can retreat, and that's why we had our hand on our side when we backed up, because it didn't need to be up on cover. But the rule is we never move in without one. So now we're going to move in, we have to have our cover up. So that's our main, one of our main moves in the first part, is making sure that covers up. So again, I'm going to start just offline. So when I move forward and start my first move, I'll just cut the angle across. Now, we're making an angle change here. Now remember, also as in the ones, we talked about the V-step rule to V-step, that we never move in without a V-step, okay? But we always move away without one. So it's improper here because of the stance I'm in to close and then step up, okay? Because that is an extra motion. So when I'm wide and I'm moving ahead, then I just cut the angle square to the line. The V-step rule is covering a side angle or to the rear or the unknown, not directly to the front. So that's just to point that out. So again, now when we're moving, we solidify our base with our block, and when we move, the hand goes basically at elbow level. And this is based on the 3 horizontal zones of protection that the front hand, remember, covers from the top of the head to the solar plexus, and the back hand picks up from the solar plexus to groin area, and our crane covers our low area. So this hand should not be cocked now. It's here. And you're going to notice a difference also when we get into long 2 of this hand won't be here, and I'll fully explain that. So we're making a statement here that we never move in without a cover. And then from here, we should be in position to chop with your hand. Now you want to make sure you have enough travel in this chop to move. I see a lot of people do the form, and I'm going to point the other direction so you see this, is when you move, put this hand out so far that all it does is open and turn around and moves a couple of inches or an inch, and that's supposed to be a chop. Okay, now anybody knows that's not a chop, meaning a strike that would do some hurt to somebody. So the hand has to know, I need to be back here to get enough travel in that chop instead of just turning the hand around and moving it. So think about that when you're moving, that you have to have the travel in the strike. Remember, it goes with that rule we talked about earlier, that we never just block. We block and cock in the same motion. So again, sideways to see if my hand was out this far, I said a block, and then if you have to draw before you can hit, and that's another common move that I see, that's breaking that rule of making the cock a separate motion. You get your 1, 2, 3. And people do it without thinking about it because they know the brain tells you you can't hit from there. You need some travel, so you draw it back. So when you block, keep it across enough where it has enough travel to become a strike. Okay, so let's go back to the first set of moves again. We're moving into 12, we solidify your base, and turn the hand and chop. Now, as far as footwork goes, see a lot of people step basically straight and then dig out the heels and drop. A lot of people drop into a kneel. All this doesn't matter. It's what power principle you're trying to show. The main reason we're doing this, again, like I say, is you're moving in with the cover and you have enough travel to strike and your cover is up. That's the main statement you're making here. Whether you drop here or dig your heels or settle into a horse, that's just bringing in another power principle. Anyway, so when that happens, we made our chop. Our chop becomes our cover and we walk up to it and pick up your second line of your block and the hand turns and chops. Okay, so that's just completes the inward series. Remember, we're moving in, so we have to have a cover up. Our hand has to be in position to have enough travel to chop using torque, where we have the twist into the outward, downward, diagonal chop. Okay, and that completes the inward series. Practice that a little bit, and we'll be right back with the outward series. Okay, thank you. Okay, now that's it. As far as the inwards go, is real easy. Let's do that again, and then we'll pick up the next series. So I'm going to move over again, get on my mark, basically face my 12 line, start from my formal horse. We move into the line with your block and cover, torque and chop, do our step through, block, and make our chop. Now I'm going to transition back to the line so you can pick up the footwork pattern. Now I'm going to put my heel, my right heel in the center of the X, and pick up my neutral line to 12. I'm going to draw back to my cat, and remember again, this just is basically saying, hey, let's go back to normal in the middle of the X. This is what, again, we're tying a bunch of single moves together to make a form out of it. So the transition, just for footwork so you can understand where we're going. I'm coming from 12, and I'm not even going to use my hands. Coming from 12, I make my cat to 12, and make sure I don't change my center line. Then I'm going to cover 9 o'clock to my left by sliding over and torquing into my line to be in a left neutral facing 9. Another common mistake that I see a lot of people do in the form is because they're on this angle and the center line basically points at 130, is do like this and almost face 3 o'clock. And if I do that, it puts the man at 9 behind me. Then I have to turn all the way around basically to face this line. Remember, what we're trying to show here is a person in front of us, or motion, because there is no real attackers here, as it's still a basics form, is facing the front, then facing the sides, and then covering the rear. So if I make the man from 12 be 12, and make the turn to basically 3, and make the man at 9 behind me, that's not what we're trying to do. So I always want to keep my center line to 12 o'clock through the series of moves. Okay, now, when we're back in the position, and we might have said this before, we have a rule or principle that when you cat, you cock. So when you cock your hands, all the different ways we do it, and mostly we're going to be doing this now, is when the cat happens. So when we draw back, you settle with the cock position. And remember, in this particular style system here, the hand that reaches across is on top. Okay, my left hand doesn't go on the bottom. If the left hand reaches across, it's above. If the right hand reaches across, it's on top. And we're going to change that when we get into the higher forms. But in the lower forms, that's our principle we're going to stay with. So remember that the hand that reaches across is on top. And we go to this position. You'll see some people do it this way. This eliminates a little bit of torque. If you go to this palm to palm, you have more torque in both hands. Okay, so anyway, we're coming from this position. We draw over, and then we're going to cover our angle, and we're going to combine power principles now of torque and backup mass. So I'm going to use torque. Torque, remember, is the twist. So to break this down, when I get over here, I'm still retarding the twist, and I'm going to twist in. And that twist is what does the block. That's what torques the block in. But the motion moving forward is backup mass. And that's the feel I want to have for the punch. Again, I'm exaggerating this so you see that I'm moving that way and making the punch happen. So you understand that backup mass is your body weight moving in line with the strike. So that's the combined power principle here, is torque for the block and backup mass for the punch. So that comes together again. So when we move, I'm going and the backup mass and the punch and torque on the block. Then from here, it's the same transition, but I'm going to stay right here and do it. Then I don't know, there's no reason to move to the X from here. Let's go back to the cat again facing 12. And then repeat the process on the opposite side of sliding off and having your torque and backup mass come into the block, okay, with your punch. Now, our difference here, to point this out in our first series, how it differs from the ones is we blocked with our front hand. Let's counter with our front hand. See, so we block with the front hand, counter with the front hand. Now, like I pointed out, every series of moves, we're going to change the thought process. So when we go to the outwards, we say, okay, now how can I do that different? Well, oh yeah, this is the same as long one. I blocked with the front hand and countered with the rear hand. But there was an and then there. So now we're doing it with. So the only difference in this outward to long one is we took out the and then. Remember, in long one, we went block and then counter with the rear hand. Or block with the front hand and then counter with the rear hand with that stance change in place being torque. The only difference is let's block with the front hand and counter with the rear hand at the same time and use those power principles of torque and backup mass together. So that's the feel we want to have here. I explain this a lot of times of knowing the difference between a mill and a lathe, okay, as we use both principles. If you know the difference between a mill and a lathe, or if you don't, I'll explain it. In a mill, the work, what you're working on, is stationary, and the cutter turns. It's just in the reverse and opposite principle we use all the time. And the cutter moves into the material, like a tornado moving across the ground. And in a lathe, the cutter is stationary, and the work turns or moves. So it's a reverse principle or opposite principle. So the mill, the work is stationary, and the cutter moves. In a lathe, the cutter is stationary, and the work moves. So here we want to be the mill that we're twisting and moving into our work at the same time. So that's your torque and backup mass principle combined. And that's how a mill works. I ask people all the time, how does a drill a hole? They say, by turning around. I said, no. You can hold your hand on a drill all day long and it won't do a thing but spin around on your hand. Unless you gave it backup mass by pushing your hand up on the drill or pulling the drill down on your hand. So it's a combination principle. They both work in combination of torque and backup mass or torque in marriage with gravity. So you have to have the torque in the drill as well as the backup mass pushing it down to make it bore the hole. And that should clear up the principle. What we're doing here is exactly the same. You're acting like a mill or you're acting like a lathe. Here it's the mill as you're twisting and moving. So again, let me do that series again. Then we come from our last outward, we come into our position, and we move off, and you make the block and the punch at the same time, then reach across and working the same thing on the opposite side. And this will bring us back, if I stayed on pattern, bring us back to our left foot back in the intersection. Okay, so put those two together now, and we'll be back with the upward series. All right, thank you. Okay, and I should have that series put together with the first series. One thing before I continue, you'll notice on the tape, if you're watching close, that in the last series, I said that you wind up with your left foot back in the intersection, and it should be your right foot. I still haven't learned my left from my right. Okay, anyway, now let's go back to the beginning and put those two series together again. I'm moving off center, but the second series won't be online, basically because I'm starting just to show this position, and the relationships will be there, though. So we're moving in, okay, we start position, we move forward, inward, and chop, and inward, and chop. Then we come back to 12, move off with your torque and backup mass, come back to 12, move off with your torque and backup mass. Now I'm going to move to the line, and I'll show this from the front and the rear of the transition. This is the way you're watching now from the front. I'm, again, right foot in the intersection, and I'm going to have to add my cover angle. Adding the cover angle is just like covering, that if I was facing 12, you notice here on line of heel and toe, and I said cover, I have to move my front foot over enough. So when I pivot, I'll come out heel and toe going the opposite direction. So this amount is what we call the cover angle. You have to step across enough to transition. Now, to make this happen again, I'll be on line this way. So my toe is in the intersection, and my foot, you'll notice now, is basically heel and toe, but it's that far off the line. So the distance we're looking at here is the amount of motion we're talking about. So I have to slide my front foot over to put my heel on the line, so when I pivot, I am heel and toe going in the opposite direction. Okay, so I'll show this again, like I say, both ways. Again, I want to go and reference my center line back to 12. This is 3, and this is 12 where you're looking. So I'm going to turn back to my cat to pick up 12. Then I'm going to say, well, I'm going to have to slide my foot back and cross the line, so when I spin, I come out heel and toe going to 6 o'clock. And that's watching from the front. Now I'll let you see it from the back. In this position, I would be here, and then I will come to my cat. Then I have to cut across the line, so when I spin, I come out heel and toe going to now what would be 6 o'clock. Okay, now that's the footwork pattern. Now we're going to change our power principle again to the sister, or what we call brother or sister. We had torque and backup mass. Now we're using torque and marriage with gravity. Now, marriage with gravity, remember, is dropping to gain power. It is the same thing really as backup mass. Backup mass is your body weight moving in line with the strike, but we say that on a horizontal line. On a vertical line, we call it marriage with gravity, and it's basically just dropping to gain power. Okay, now I'm going to use a stick here to point this out. Rick, bring me that stick, would you? Thank you. Okay. I'm going to watch this, and a good angle to show it on will be the side, this side. Okay. Now, if I covered and step back and my hand is basically in cocked position, I'm going to spin and drop into a kneel, and in the drop is where the strike happens. I relate this to taking a machete, and I want you to imagine this as a machete or a hammer or anything you want to imagine as a tool, and I'm going to chop a tree down. I'm going to drop right into the strike with the hit, and it goes down. So this is the motion we're looking for. I'm going and coming down. See that strike down is the drop with that alignment. Okay, and that is the principle that we're showing now. Okay, so when your hand comes down, you just imagine that motion, and that is the alignment. See, lots of funny moves here that don't really pick up that line. Okay, you want to take this back again, right? Okay, now I want to change and work sideways on this so you just see the motion. So when I add the align, well, I'll go first back to square. Okay, and I'm going to hit my move. When I was in my outward, again, when we cock. Okay, then I'm going to hit my angle, and I'm going to spin. Now I'm going to forget the left hand, and just watch the right hand. It's going to go up as I spin, and when I get ready to drop, in the bottom of the drop, the hand comes down. I'm going to do that off of this angle so you can see that a little better. When I come from here and I step back, forgetting I have a left hand, I'm going to hit down this line, so the hand's got to go up, and then it's up ready to go down, and when you come down in the drop is when this hits. Now, this goes down to level, and there's a short whip back up. It hits and whips back up, because then it's in position to go down on the opposite side. So you want to hit, and this goes down. And that is in the marriage with gravity part. And down and up. The upward opposes that. So the upward goes in with that motion going on. Now from the side, let's just see that again. When I come from here and I drop back, when I spin now, forgetting I have a right hand, the upward comes up against that drop. Okay? And then the two match as you hit. Then you freeze your hands, because really what we're making is a figure eight, and I'll show that. And I make my V-step, and again, this is just to practice the other side. It represents bringing your feet together to step back and do the opposite side. So in transition, I freeze my hands, I make my V-step and add the cover angle again, and then my left hand is up ready to go down, my right hand is down ready to go up, and they change places. Okay, so really, if you're watching, this is the principle that you're doing, which is nothing but the figure 8 as everything advanced boils into the figure 8 pattern. So you can take the figure 8, let's make that 2, and we go, here's one, and here's the other. Okay, now we'll do that from the beginning, or the series in motion, as the form happened. So we came from 3 o'clock, we go back to 12, add our cover angle, our spin and upward and our strike, our V-step, and our spin to our second upward. Now we're back to facing 12, where we came from, or where we started the form. Now you notice we're back to 12. We've hit all 4 walls. We haven't covered our downwards yet. And here's where our new angles will come in a second. So work on that section, and we'll be back with the downwards. Thank you. Okay, now you should have that section down with the others. Now let's go back to the beginning and do that again. Again, I'll move over, get offline to start. We go inward, chop, inward, chop, cat, outward with your punch, no end in, reset, outward with, reset, add the cover angle, upward with your block, strike rather, excuse me, make our V-step and our upward with your strike. Now we're at our downward. Now this brings us to a difference that I want to point out in the 1s and the 2s. The 1s and the 2s are what we call our basics forms. And there's a difference in the first downward block in each form. There's something different about the first downward block between the 1s and the 2s. So let me point this out. Remember when we did short 1, and I'm facing 3 o'clock, and I'm going to cover the back wall with my first downward block. You moved away from the wall and do the downward block, because that was our principle. Remember, as a retreating form, we had to move away. In long 1, your first downward block moved into the wall, the same wall. Now I'll use the camera as reference as the opponent. The first downward, in short 1 again, I moved away from the camera and did your first downward block. And then in long 1, we moved to our, I'll get on angle so you can see this, we moved to our cat, and then we moved into the wall for your first downward block. So short was away and long was in. The 2s turn this around. Okay? Short in the 1s, remember again, short was away and long was in. So we turn that around in the 2s to be short in and long away to cover the same line. And the line now is the 430 line. So we're going to move in on our short form. So position-wise, to get back where we were, I'm in the intersection with the last move. Again, we make our V-step to bring our feet together, and then I'm going to cut my left foot to 430 and pick up the first corner, the back corner, the first time we use a 45-degree angle. And that's with your downward block. So when I step back and hit the angle, I'm going to do my downward. And I'm going to turn my back to the camera and use the front angle as 430, where the position would be. So when we were here in position, when I make my V-step, I'm going to get my base and I'm going to torque, and strictly use torque for my downward block. Now, a common mistake in the form in this part, so you understand it, is I see a lot of people come in, turn and face the angle, and then make the block like push. See, there is no body mechanics left, or I'm not doing any body mechanics. It's strictly arm motion of pushing the block in without any torque. So I want to use the angle, the turning to the angle, as the torque for the block. Let me do that one more time. So when we come in, I make my position. I say, get your position base, and then you torque the block in. Don't face the angle and push the block in as a separate move. This is a combined power principle you're using. Is the torque in the block. Okay. Don't make it a one, waste all the torque, and then just make an arm-only move. Okay, so here was our torque, and here's where the separation comes in. Remember in our last 2 series, we did torque and backup mass and torque and marriage with gravity. So now we separated. We said, okay, here is just torque, and then my step through heel palm, And now I'm going to move in, so I need a cover up. And the rule is never make a check or cover a single move. So another common mistake is to block 1, cover 2, and step through 3 with the heel palm. See, when you move in, you want it to be the cover. So when the hand was down from the block, as you start moving, it just becomes the cover at the same time. So we step through, and our backup mass is established. Now, to relate this to a technique here, this would be, if you know the technique thrusting salute, this is what you're doing. See, we're just leaving the kick out because of the principle we're trying to teach is the backup mass principle. A common mistake for beginners in the technique is to make the block come to a balanced position and kick, and then have to fight yourself out of the balanced position to get moving again for the heel palm. See, so if we did thrusting salute and left the kick out, they would be going wham, wham, and that's what you're doing in this form. So it teaches you that the full step through is for your backup mass in the strike. Then when we learn long two, we'll go back in and put the kick in because we should know the principle, and we'll get to that when we hit long two. Okay, so that's just a little cross-reference for you. So again, when we come off the angle, you hit your base, and you torque the block, and you make your cover and heel palm when you step through for your backup mass, heel palm, all together. And this is at 430. Okay, and then I'm going to hit the 730 again when you catch your cock, and I keep my center line to 430. Hit my angle, I get my base, and then torque the block, and then make my step through heel palm and cover as my next move. Okay? Now, let's do that one more time. I'm going to do it now on angle, just like it comes out of the form. So our last position for our upward, we were back to facing 12. See? And this is another principle to think about this, is we say we never leave a pattern until you finish one. Or when you finish a pattern, you have to go to a new one. Remember when we did in, out, and up, we had faced all 4 walls. Okay, so if I faced all 4 walls, I have to go to the corners as a general rule. Then when I hit all the corners, I can go back to the X. But here we're only going to really add 2 corners. We're going to establish all 4 corners, but we're going to just move on 2, and I'll explain that a little bit later. So now, when we're in our last position, I'm going to come up, make my cocked position, hit 430, torque my downward, step through with my cover and heel palm to 430, come back, hit 730, and add my step through heel palm and cover to 730. Okay. Don't forget to fill the void of your cover under your arm. It's not here. But there's another general rule. When the front hand goes high, the back hand goes low. The front hand goes low, then the back hand will have to go high. See? Okay. And that completes the downward series of motion. Work on that, and we'll be back with the isolation part. Not really isolation. Remember, there is no isolation here. It's the new material, because that's where we look for our new material in all of our forms is after the in, out, up, down sequence. And this completes the in, out, up, down sequence. So now everything we're going to do is new. Okay, so work on that, and we'll be back. Okay, now I hope you've got that down and all that put together and ready for the next section. Now let's go back and do the whole thing up to there. Again, I'll do this just like from the front. We'll move to my pattern. We start from the formal horse. We move in your inward and chop. Your inward and chop. Your cat, center line to 12. Your outward with your block, center line to 12. Your outward with your block, center line to 12. Add your cover angle. Upward with your strike. Add your V-step. Upward with your strike. Add your V-step. Downward to 430. Step through heel palm. Downward to 730. Step through heel palm. Okay, now I'm going to move a little bit over, get close to the line, so this will help you see what's going on in the next section. So remember, we've completed in, out, up, down to here. So after that comes your new material. So everything basically we do here is there's something new and different about it. So we're facing 730, and we're going to turn and cover 130 again and spin completely around. Now we have a saying that I think I might have said before in the earlier tapes that we always cover with an upward. But now here we're covering with an inward. Again, remember, this is something new. See, so in the position, thing we don't want to do here is swing this arm out in a long arc. That's another common mistake. Is take this, I'm exaggerating this, is take the hand out and come around in a big circle here. When Mr. Parker used to teach us this is for the camera, he would say, you move your hand straight. He says, so your hand that's up, you want to bring it back like you're going to back knuckle yourself in the nose. And then like where we punch ourselves in the side here, that we get out of our own way. We break back and get out of your own way here. It's the same thing with your hand. Your hand is coming back at your nose, so you get out of the way of your hand and let it travel on the straight line. Okay, so remember, that's what we're trying to do. So when we spin to our cat and cover the 130 line, the hand comes in straight and makes the block the thrusting inward block to 130, and then I slide off with my extended outward block. This is your new block, your first extended outward block. The hand is no longer cocked on our side. It's in a half fist position under your pec muscle. See, what we're starting to do is put your hands in realistic position. Because we don't do this, in the system, whatever the hand's doing, unless it's going to be used as a weapon. We put our hands in realistic position, and this is like having your hand close to realistic position in this form, and then we'll add the other hand in another form. So we're not down here anymore, remember. We're high under your pec muscle with your half fist already formed. So when we spin, we go inward and slide off with that cocked. And we go to our forward bow transition with the half fist strike. So we forward bow transition and come back. Now this is the same as long one, but the difference is we're blocking with the front hand, countering with the rear hand, but the difference is when we did long one to do a move like this, we blocked with whatever we did, and then we dropped that hand and cocked it to use your other hand and locked into the forward bow. That's to get the feel and learn what the stances should feel like. This is the first time you use the stance in transition like we really use it. We have a saying that we don't use a forward bow as a stance, we use it as a transition. So that means if you're neutral, the strike hits, you hit the forward, and when the hand comes out, so does the foot. So it's forward and back to neutral. Neutral, forward, neutral. See, it's a transition move. We don't lock in it and stay there. The other difference is we don't drop our hand. So this hand remains up, and we say this is your first check. Yeah, it stays up, it doesn't drop. It's the first time you left it up in this type of motion. So it stays up as your check. The hand is under the pec muscle. Then we cover a new angle of 1030. We just come across the cat position, slide off with the extended, hand is under the pec, we make our strike. Okay, now I want to move to the tape to show you basically what's going on here. So I'm going to put my back foot on the 6 o'clock line to cover this angle at 7:30. So when I spin and come around, when I slide off, that basically puts this foot to center line, and I strike. Then I cover 10:30, I slide off, and slide up to 10:30. This puts me back to the line. I make my transition. So when we step up, we're basically going to be centered and square where we started from again. See, so if you don't have a full 45-degree angle change to step up to square, you're not in the right place. A lot of people cut the angle real short and only have to move the foot very little. And I've seen some people lately that are so short, and when they step, they become out of square because the move was so short. So we want to hit all these angles dead on, a full 45-degree angle, stance change, and then have a full 45 degrees to close, and then we go to attention, and then we bow. Okay? And that should explain that, and we'll do it again when we do the whole form. All right? Practice that, and we'll be right back. Okay, and I hope you've got that down, and that basically completes the form. So let's go back and do it again. Now remember that when I moved around a lot to show the reference lines on the tape, that was just to show you where you're at. So when we do the whole form, we'll basically start in the center on the X, like we'd be doing the form. And again, now this will just represent my start position and should basically be the end position. So the lines were going to be parallel lined off. Like instead of seeing the cross, a lot of what I mean by the parallel lines, it looks like a tic-tac-toe sign, just like Form 5 does. Okay, now, so we'll start from our horse. We go inward chop, cat, 12 o'clock, outward with your punch, cat to 12, outward with your punch, cat to 12, add your cover angle, your spin and drop, your V-step, your downward comes next, move off to 430, the step through heel palm, into 730 with our step through heel palm, cover 130, slide off, strike, cover 1030, slide off, strike, and when we close, we should be where we started to our close and bow. And that's basically short two. And most schools, when you learn the twos for around purple belt level, one of the requirements is the finger set. So we'll be back in a minute and cover the finger set. Thank you. Okay, now, before we get into the finger set, I want to talk about what the finger is. Okay, the finger set is done from a horse, and in our system that says isolation. I make jokes all the time about this. I say I don't want to see anybody mess up the footwork in finger set because there isn't any. It's all done from a horse. And just like in our forms, anytime we stand in a horse and do anything, that's food for thought. And the food for thought here is, what am I doing with my fingers and my hands? The finger set is what we call the insert moves that you put in your techniques to make this work. And I'll point that out when we complete the set. Now the set is broken into 5 categories. It's the how we do our pokes, our whips, our slices, our claws, and our hooks. And it's not a mumbo-jumbo mix match. We do all the pokes, then we go to all the whips, and we go to all the slices, all the claws, and all the hooks. We don't say here's a hook and here's a poke and oh here's another hook. You understand? It's all categorized motion. So the first, in the poke, we're doing the 3-finger pokes. So your first and third finger are dead straight, and the middle one bends. And what we try to do is get the 3 fingertips even and braced and poked against each other, where it becomes basically a solid weapon. It's really what we call a spear hand more than a poke, but we are poking with the ends of the fingers. And if you don't work on this and develop it to use anywhere but soft targets, it won't be very useful to you. Like if you saw the movie, James Bond movie, You Only Live Twice, filmed at Masayama's camp in Japan, and they're throwing watermelons up in the air and putting a spear hand through a watermelon. If you can do that, then we'll say that weapon is useful to you. If you don't work on it, it won't be useful. Okay, there's different sayings like stuff in the marshmallow in the piggy bank, you can't do it. See? So this has to be a weapon. So anyway, we start out, just like all forms, we start off formal, and then we set. Then we go the 3-finger to the eye, then the eye, and then into the solar plexus, and the solar plexus, then under the diaphragm, and under the diaphragm. So when we do this, watching from the side, we cut each hand move here short by 1 hand length. We start at full range, and then our second series of moves comes to the reach of the wrist, and then the third series of moves comes again to the reach of the wrist, where we decrease your range 1 hand length each time you use it. Then we turn this around. For those of you that know it, when we do Form 4, when we get in the related part of this, we extend the range. So we'll go and extend the range. We'll start short, flick, poke, thumb in 4 to reverse this process. Okay, but right now, so you understand that, we go full, 1 hand length shorter, 1 hand length shorter. So we're starting, we set, we go to eye at full extension, 1 hand length shorter, center line to the solar plexus, solar plexus. Then we go under the diaphragm and diaphragm. Now, a common mistake here is to shoot across. If you do this, you'd be hitting and sliding. You would not have an angle of incidence. So you have to shoot straight in. Right hand doesn't pass your center line. If it did, it would slip. See, so you keep it going forward. Then we go to our elbow poke. Now the elbow here is used for the borrowed reach. If a person was here and I didn't use this move, I can't make this reach. So to point this out, let me bring Rick in. Rick, would you come in here a second? This is just so you see the principle. That I'm standing here and he's beside me with the arm like from here, so I cannot reach over my shoulder. So I need some help. So I go, boom, this bends him over, and now the poke will reach. So this move, it says in the statement, it needs some help, so the elbow is what gives it the help to give you the borrowed reach. Okay, thank you, Rick. Okay, so that's what we call our elbow poke and our elbow poke from the opposite side. The next move is a 2-hand lapel grab. The right hand has to move, the left hand is already in place. So we come up and drop our wedge of our elbows through the arms to wipe off in our frictional pull. And then we go to our double spear hands, palm up now, into the throat, under the throat, and then come back and we do our scissor poke. Now this you want to imagine as a scissor poke, like a pair of big head shears. The blades can't flex. And relate this to margin for error or a double slice. If you hunt birds, you hunt with a shotgun, you don't hunt with a rifle for margin for error because the shot pattern is so wide it covers a large area. A lot of people do this and they point the finger straight ahead and just poke straight, like doing this in 2 straight lines. Well, that's shooting birds with a pistol or a rifle, that one bullet going in one path. So really when we do our scissor poke, it's like going slice with this hand and slice with this hand. When we do it together, they both close in from the outside to sweep that pattern. See? So it gives you the margin for error. So it's like a slice, but it's a poke because we're going to cover the slices in another category. See? That's what's called a scissor poke. Just imagine the big head shears and the ends closing together. See? So we broke that down on the throat, and then our scissor poke. Now, that completes the pokes. Now we go to our whips. So imagine just a push down here and a check. Remember, there's a lot of extra moves people want to put in here. It's just for position. The main thing we're looking at is what you're doing with the hand. So we go to shape of the crane for form. We turn and do our whip and come back. And this is just it's a finger whip, just hitting loosely with the back of the fingers and coming back to the shape of the crane. When you do the form, remember, shape of the crane always points forward. See, so it hits and it comes back pointing forward, and that's whether it's up or whether it's down, and that's in the next series of moves. So we hit, and we did this one, and we go to the opposite side, and do this one. That's the 2 highs, so now we go to the 2 lows. This would be basically a groin shot. And we go to our whips, and that's all the whips. The highs and lows on both sides. Now we go to our slices. We bring the hand down. A lot of people do a block here or whatever. Again, that's just to get your hand in position to use. So all we're doing is sweeping the hand over, and we do a inward palm up and an outward palm down. And this is basically what we call an elephant trunk position, or your forearm is vertical. You don't do this extended. You keep your arm tight. Now, this originally was called a horizontal slice and a reverse horizontal slice. And we got to thinking about it. So it's really everything's based on in, out, up, down, and really all we're doing is an inward and an outward. And so we just say, hey, this is an inward and an outward. And an inward is always done palm up, and an outward is always done palm down. So we have a backup to the finger. So you can see inward here, the first finger braces it, and the knuckle locks. So I move, instead of pushing it away, if I went palm down in the inward and lose the brace. See? So inward is always palm up, and outward is always palm down. So we do both sides there. Okay, so that's your slice. Then we go to our claws. Now, the claws we do many different ways. So we have a saying in the system, whenever you hear the word claw, it doesn't just mean claw, it means heel palm claw. And then when you hear the heel palm, it doesn't mean heel palm, it means heel palm claw. So we're using the heel palm here with your claws on your first move. This hand comes down, and you're really hitting on a horizontal heel palm. Okay, the heel palm hits, but then my hand is not in position to claw, so I have to turn my hand up so my fingers point up, and then the claw will happen. And now my hand is in basically chop position. So if I hit with a chop, I don't have to change my hand position to get the claw. Okay, and that's what you want to show when you do this series of moves. Okay, now let me bring Rick in again so you see this. You'll just stand here facing me this way. Take your glasses off, Rick. Okay, so you can see this, and I'm standing apart, so Rain should just understand the hand. If I hit this way with the heel palm, it wouldn't be a claw. So if I hit, I said, I want to add a claw, I have to turn my fingers up vertical, and now they will claw through the eyes. See, so you have to make the change from horizontal to vertical. But if my hand comes in this position and I chop, then the claw will go through the eyes without making a change. And that's the 2 relationships and the 2 different hand positions we're trying to show here. So what we say is heel palm claw with a change, and then chop claw without the change. So that's the position you want to look at when you work the hands. Thank you, Rick. So we'll take it up to that point again from the beginning. So we made our set. We go I, solar plex, diaphragm, diaphragm. Elbow poke, up, break the hold, throat, eyes. Set for your whips. High right, high left. Low right, and our low left. Then we go down and do our slices in and out, and that's all there is. Then we go out to the side. Our heel palm hits horizontal, turns to vertical for the claw through. Make sure you give enough travel over here for cocking. Then chop claw. Then the other hand goes heel claw, chop claw. Now this is in position to go back. We go overhand and back, front and behind, overhand and back. And reverse it to underhand and back, underhand and back. Now we go back to our first grab, our two-hand lapel grab that we broke from the top. Now we break from the bottom with basically thrusting wedge. So we go in, and the first two fingers are in the eyes. We claw through, go straight overhead. Imagine the sides, one on each side. Heels hit the leg first, and then the fingertips. That's to reiterate or make the statement again. I understand the heel palm is used with the claw. So that's why the heel palm hits first, one and. So it should be ba-up when you hit there. And that completes the claws, and then we start our hooks. So we set your hand, but you can do this either set and then do it, or you can start this hand moving as you set. And we're starting to make a poke again. And the head turns, so we go out to the side, and we do a two-finger hook now. And hook, and this pulls on the way back with an anchored elbow against your chest. Hook, and then the other hand starts straight, goes out and makes the hook. And you wind up, like Mr. Park used to say, it looks like you're sitting behind a machine gun going. If you imagine that, you'll be in the right position. See, so again, when you made your heels, you set and you start straight, and you go out and hook, and this ends, and you close and bow. Now let me do the complete form one time again. We start, we set, we go I, solar plex, diaphragm, elbow poke, up, break the hold, throat, eyes, set for your whips, whip, down, slice, heel claw, chop claw, heel claw, chop claw, overhand and back, underhand and back. Break the hole from the front, up, claw down the sides, heels, fingers, set, right hook, left hook, and close, and that's the finger set. Thank you.